Here's an idea. At some point in the future, we might become legitimately worried about the well-being of robots. So we're in the future and you're walking down the street. Maybe you're on your way to the future store. It's a beautiful day when suddenly someone crossing the street gets hit by a car. You hear the screech of tires, a scream, maybe it was theirs, and a thud. You rush over to the person who was hit there on the ground, writhing, unable to express themselves or get up, and that's when you realize that they are not a person, or maybe more specifically, they're not a human being. They're a robot, a very human-looking, autonomous machine. Does your panic subside? Are you no longer concerned? Or is nothing different? Robot or not, they need help. Hey! Furthermore, is the driver at fault? Have they destroyed property? Or have they injured and potentially killed a non-human person? All of these questions surround what you could generally categorize as a moral sense towards technology. One half of this equation concerns the moral agency of things like artificial intelligence and robots. Do they even have agency? Can they act morally? We're going to talk about the other half of the equation, moral patiency. In what situations and at what point do robots, technology, and artificial intelligence become the subjects of moral concern? When should we worry about them? When should their interests be placed alongside ours, or at the very least be given serious consideration?
Help, computer.
Now, if you're like most people, your first reaction to this question is, what? Probably whatever machines you have in your life, no matter how quote unquote smart or quote unquote charming they are, you never really worry about their feelings.
I hate you!
When you drop your computer or phone, you wince not because you have literally hurt them, but because you have potentially damaged a useful and expensive object. And as fun and funny as your Roomba is, it really is nothing more than a particularly smart vacuum cleaner. And cat transportation system. Though, and this is true, my grandfather has taken to calling his Roomba Sylvester, after Sylvester the cat, because in his words, it sleeps most of the day, only ever gets up to eat, and when it's done, goes right back to its favorite spot. I'm not about to make some hasty generalizations based upon a joke that my grandpa tells about his floor robot, but for real, even though our technology doesn't express things,
I have no particular desire to discuss the matter.
It's still expressive of things from our perspective. We anthropomorphize it. We give it human qualities in the same way we do with our pets.
Good boy.
But when we see our pets expressive of things, it's built atop this complex idea of what an animal is. It has feelings, desires, needs. It's alive, which is, yeah, it's a simple word, but a complicated concept.
I am alive, yes? Yes!
When a pet suffers or stops being alive, it's a tragedy. When a computer malfunctions or dies, it's inconvenient. You might cry out of stress or frustration, but not out of a sense of loss. You will not mourn. I wonder if we'll ever have that feeling, empathy or regret or pity for a machine, and if so, at what point?
I need him.
What do you need him for?
He's my friend.
At what point will we look at a machine and feel bad because it's suffering? Because it has a need that we can't address, because it and not its function is gone.
Batteries not included.
The answer might be never, especially if your position is that technology in any form is only ever a tool. John Searle's Chinese room thought experiment, for instance, helps here. It goes like this. So you're in a locked room and someone is passing messages to you written in Chinese through the gap underneath the locked door. The problem being, you don't know Chinese. None whatsoever. But luckily, in the room with you, you have a set of instructions written in English, or whatever language you speak, that instruct you on how to respond to those messages in Chinese. In Searle's words, you would be able to correlate one set of formal symbols with another set of formal symbols. To the people passing those messages to whom you are responding in Chinese based upon the rules written in front of you, it would appear as though you speak Chinese, but none of this means that you understand it. In this thought experiment, you are a computer. Computers can follow rules and perform actions, but that doesn't mean that they understand them. Computers can't think. They do not have consciousness. This fact removes technology, androids, artificial intelligence, robots, from moral concern for most people. No consciousness, no thinking, no feeling, no pain, no suffering. Moral patiency rescinded. There's a lot of criticism for this line of reasoning. Like, what is consciousness anyway? We used to think that animals didn't have it, and whoops. And also, if a complaint is that technology is just following rules without understanding the meaning of the rules, doesn't that also describe us? Isn't the existence of religion, science, and philosophy an explicit admission that we don't know what the rules mean? In David J. Gunkel's The Machine Question, which, by the way, if this kind of thing interests you, is so good and was basically the basis for this episode, in it, he writes, Western conceptions of morality customarily consist in systematic rules of behavior that can be encoded, like an algorithm, and implemented by different moral agents in a number of circumstances and situations. There are, in short, program instructions that are designed to direct behavior and govern conduct. Take, for instance, the 10 Commandments. And also, sure, computers are built by people, but aren't people also built by people? Basically, I'm just going through all of the defenses for Commander Data from that one episode of Star Trek where he goes to court.
We've all been dancing around the basic issue. Does Data have a soul? I don't know that he has. I don't know that I have.
But really, when the chips are down or the cards are flipped or whatever gambling metaphor you like for there being some kind of finality or tragedy confronting the life of a piece of technology, is this really what we're going to be thinking about? Whether or not this thing does or does not possess what is clearly definable as consciousness or is feeling actual pain, whatever that is? I don't know. It's hard to say. The point at which this is a real question where robots are such a part of our lives that they are potentially worthy of real concern is very far away. But I will say this, in that Star Trek episode, I was legit worried about and rooting for Data. During Roy Batty's Tears in the Rain monologue in Blade Runner, I completely buy that this replicant has seen some stuff.
You people wouldn't believe.
And as a side note, Rutger Hauer has said of that line, which he partially improvised, that the replicant in the final scene, by dying, shows Deckard what a real man is made of. But probably all of my feels are because Data really is a person. Brent Spiner. Roy Batty is Rutger Hauer. And they're in works of fiction, the very premise of which is that I accept certain untrue things as true. But then what about Tamagotchi, or Seaman, or even Animal Crossing? Technologically constructed life where you possess a certain amount of responsibility.
Congratulations to me, I'm now a homeowner.
The Tamagotchi is sold as a pet. My girlfriend hasn't turned on our DS in months because of how guilty she feels about the probable state of our town. That's not really moral concern. She's not legitimately worried. If she were, she would turn on the DS and pull up all of the weeds, and I would too for that matter. But maybe it shows in some measure how we could eventually have or be convinced to have legitimate concern or worry for technology. Like, I wonder if my grandfather ever feels even a little bit guilty about not leaving enough dirt on the ground for Sylvester.
Oh, you're hungry.
What do you guys think? Will machines ever become moral patients? And if so, at what point? Let us know in the comments. And I've seen subscriber buttons glitter in the dark near the Tannhauser gate. So what if we just put all of the bits on a bus? Because buses are common carrier, and then the problem is solved. Let's see what you guys had to say about net neutrality. First things first, we had an awesome week at VidCon. Thanks to everybody who came to panels, who came to the meetup, who just stopped and said hi. It was so great to meet you. And I got to hang out with some of my friends and YouTubers who I really look up to. And we have some video proof of that in the works. So next week's episode of Idea Channel is going to be an extra special episode. Not like Degrassi extra special, like, you know, as special as Idea Channel would get, but still very special. Okay, so now on to comments. The Irtar says that internet service should absolutely be common carrier, but that if you want it to be a public utility, that comes with its own whole other set of troubling factors. One of them being that if networks aren't unbundled, then the choice, which right is not always a choice, of where you live might automatically mean that your internet is just always going to be provided by this one company. Relatedly, Galid Ganef and Emil Jacobson point out that common carrier doesn't solve a more basic problem, which is the lack of competition as far as ISPs are concerned. And yeah, like if networks were to be unbundled, then that means that people could get access to the infrastructure without having to build it, which is not the case right now. And they link to, and a lot of other people link to this Ars Technica post. So we'll put a link to that in the description too. To any weebs and everyone else wondering how this kind of thing affects people who don't live in the United States, well, first things first, net neutrality is a concern and should be a concern in any place where there is internet. As far as I know, Europe is much more protective of this kind of thing than the United States is, though I could be wrong. If I am wrong, someone please correct me. But also, if you think about our example that we provided of the girl trying to develop what would be the next Facebook, right? If her success is limited by access throttled by internet service providers, right? That effectively eliminates what could be a global service. So, in that sense, that is another sense in which this kind of thing could affect the global internet and not just the United States internet. Jacob Hamblin and Galid Ganef have a really great back and forth about the purpose and utility of regulation when it comes to ISPs. So you should check this out. I will put a link to this comment and all the other ones in the doobly-doo. Jason Perry wonders whether or not the internet should be classified as something else entirely, not a utility like water or electricity, not a common carrier, but just an entirely different thing. And this, I have no answer to this, and I will not pretend to, but this does make me think of a wonder that I have always had, which is, I wonder if the future of the internet and the future of libraries as sort of common goods are somehow intertwined. That thought is constantly just floating around in the back of my head, just in there. To Mario Castro, thank you for asking. I am just very worried about the internet. I'm from there, it's my hometown. I'm worried. Rockin' Out, this makes me sad. Not because you're I am sad that you're leaving, but that's your choice. It's because this means that I have failed in my attempt to convince you that when you hear an opinion that is the opposite of your own, you should try to engage it and try to have a conversation with it. Maybe I was too dismissive of the market, I don't know. Hal Gailey responds to my comment about the market by saying that it is disingenuous simply because the existence of what anybody would describe as a market in this space is very, very arguable. And this is a really great and insightful comment. So thanks for writing this, Hal. Anthony Sandwich Tanner, I don't think you need to watch the internet to get swag tutorials. You live with Cal Chuchesta, the world's foremost expert on swag. But for all of the rest of us, yes, let's get them while they're neutral. This week's episode is brought to you by the hard work of these subjects of moral concern. We have a Facebook, an IRC, and a subreddit, links in the doobly-doo. A 1 day late Happy Canada Day to our Canadian viewers and subscribers. We are very sorry for having missed it. And the tweet of the week comes from Luke in all caps, who points us towards a video documenting people's reactions to being filmed without their consent in public. It is both scary, fascinating, and engrossing. Yeah. And for this week's record swap, we will be replacing Joni Mitchell's Blue with Eliane Radig's Feedback Works, which I actually got from Amoeba Music while visiting LA for VidCon, so it all comes around. We'll fix that later. Anyways, adios, Joni Mitchell, and welcome, Eliane Radig.